join us now, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. It's great to have you. You know that Judd Gregg, former senator governor, said it was going to be you, Steve, and he said on the fourth vote it was going to be Steve Scalise, and that did not come through. Kevin McCarthy prevailed. Were you waiting in the wings, or that was never going to happen?
No, and hopefully you didn't bet too much money in Vegas on that. But you know, I supported Kevin. Obviously, we had a few extra rounds, 15 rounds, but hey, it worked out. And really, the debate in those rounds was over how we change the way Washington works, because I think everybody knows Washington's been broken for a long time. It really hasn't been responding to the problems that the country's facing. And so we had a lot of internal discussions about changing the rules dramatically so that we don't end up with these omnibus bills, you know, thousands of pages drop before by dark of night, right before the vote. Nobody's read it, deals with who knows how many different subjects you find out about later. You know, I think if you look at the problems families are facing, whether it's inflation, energy costs, border crisis, you know, you just talked about another crisis over at the Department of Transportation. They don't see Washington fighting for them, and we've got to change that. We've started that process now, and I think you're going to like what you see coming out of this new House.
I think that the public, Congressman, might look at what goes on in Washington on both sides of the aisle, but okay, so we're going to vote on, you know, not funding the IRS for these 87,000 new agents. I guess it's, you know, you want the country to know where the Republican Party stands versus the Biden administration and Democrats, but it's just an exercise in, you know, sort of just waving your hands. We don't like this. It's not going anywhere. Is that governing? Is that what people expect?
Well, first of all, I have not found one person in my district of about 750,000 people who have said that they want to add people to the IRS, let alone more than doubling the size of the agency. So, you know, when you look at what the CBO report said, it confirmed that their goal is to go after not just the millionaires and billionaires, but people making less than $200,000 a year, single moms working 2 jobs at a restaurant. They don't think that she's paying enough in taxes and she's cheating on her taxes, and they've said things like that. And so people are fed up with the government going after them. But you're going to see us, and look, we've got to get our committees set up. Republicans and Democrats haven't made the final selections for all the committees. Congress just got started last week. But when you see the committees up and running, you're going to see bills to get an energy policy that makes sense for this country, because there's absolutely no reason that we should be getting our energy from foreign countries, you know, whether it's OPEC, Russia, Iran. We don't need it. We can produce it ourselves a lot cheaper, a lot more energy efficient, by the way. And so let's have a bill on the floor that actually makes our country energy independent and lowers gas costs. Let's make sure that we can get bills to address inflation so that when people go to the grocery store, they're not paying so much. And let's get bills out of committee that actually secure America's border so we don't have more than 100,000 young people last year dying from fentanyl overdoses. That's what you're going to be seeing in the weeks ahead. Obviously, we've got to get the committee started, and that's in the works right now.
Yeah, in the endless debate over more government, less government, I guess people would say the IRS, you know, needs more money. They've been underfunded in recent years. Nobody gets audited anymore. Maybe there's a lot of, you know, you don't need to raise taxes to collect
taxes. I haven't heard
taxes.
those complaints either, by the way.
Well, I'm getting somewhere. But how about the FAAs? The FAA got enough money? Are you up to speed on what's happening around the country right now at all of our airports? What can you tell us?
Yeah, and can we just go a week in America without a major debacle out of the Secretary of Transportation's purview? You know, and at some point, look, you're going to see a lot of oversight in this administration. You know, and you saw supply chain breakdowns. You had the Southwest debacle where supposedly Secretary Buttigieg had been briefed in advance of that, and yet no warning to the American public. Now you see this problem at the FAA. These agencies are flush with cash. Again, you know, everybody wants to talk about, hey, just throw money at the problem. Money's been thrown at the problem, and the problem seems to get worse. So I think it's important that we start looking at the money, looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. What are they doing with our taxpayer money? Because clearly they're not spending that money to take care of families across America. And so these agencies need to be held to a different level of scrutiny, because we haven't seen any. All we see is problems and problems, and then they ask for more money when they've gotten more every year. That's not how families work, by the way. Families, when they are doing their budget, they don't say, okay, what's failed, let's just throw more money at it. They say, like, maybe we ought to do things very differently.
Leader, I don't know, how many do you count that were the, what do we call them? The hardliners. It started at 20, and then it went to, I don't know, then it went to 8, then it went to 2. I don't know how to kind of, I was watching. I know you were there.
20 to 6.
I know you were there living it.
You know,
how are you ever going to get any?
And let's remember,
could the Republican Party, you're not going to get Democrats, but can you even get your own caucus to agree on anything other than we need to, I don't know, maybe we need to close down the government so we don't raise the debt ceiling? That's a possibility, isn't it? That's what people worry about. They don't necessarily want the government doing anything, but they don't want there to be zero government.
No, and look, you know, again, we had a lot of conversations, one just last week, we've been having these for months, about how to change the way Washington works. And once we came to an agreement, you saw an overwhelming vote to pass the rules package on Monday night. That was the beginning of getting this started. Then we've brought a few other bills already. We're going to be bringing a bill again this week to deal with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, to say it shouldn't be rated to go give that oil to China. I think most Americans would agree with that. I think we're going to get a strong vote there. We had an overwhelming vote, including by a more than 2-to-1 margin yesterday. Democrats voted with Republicans to create a select committee to look into China, because China's been going unchecked, whether it be militarily, economically. And so we're now going to have a bipartisan committee that actually addresses the threat that's posed by China. Again, that was an overwhelming bipartisan vote yesterday. I know those kind don't get covered by the press because it's not the food fights you see, but frankly, a lot of these fights need to happen because our country is on the wrong track. And to get it on the right track, we've got to go and do things differently. And there's some people in Washington that don't want to change, and yet it has to happen. So, you know, that's going to continue to be a friction. But frankly, I think people are encouraged to see an actual debate on how to fix the problems of this country. And then let's go start fighting for those families so that wages can start going up again, so that we can see inflation coming down, energy costs coming down. There's no reason we can't get there, but we have to do the work to make it, to fix these problems.
Yep. Lot happened last year in spite of Republican efforts to stop a lot of things. You can probably stop everything now, or stop many things, obviously, since you have the House. But that almost seems like we're setting up a showdown in 2024, and all this is going to be just kind of a preamble to 2024. Given what happened in the midterms, and the disappointment, that was not a red wave, was it a red trickle? What did we finally decide to call that? Is there a look back at what went wrong and how to change things for 2024? Where does former President Trump fit in your view, Leader?
Yeah, in every election, you go back and you look and say, where did we do well? Where did we do wrong? Where we can do better? Now, first and foremost, our goal was to win the majority, and we did that. So if anybody wants to call it a failure to say, you know, Nancy Pelosi was the speaker running the House, passing multi-trillion-dollar bills for everything under the sun, racking up debt, and she got fired, and Kevin McCarthy is now the speaker, that's a victory. There were places that we did better than expected. New York, where we flipped 4 seats. Florida, where we flipped 4 seats. There were places where we didn't do as well. I thought in Pennsylvania we could have done a lot better. And there were some seats that, you know, were looking like we would flip that we didn't. So clearly we're looking to see how we can do better in places like that. But again, you know, you look towards, you know, what's going to happen this year. Number one, you're not going to see any of these multi-trillion-dollar bills anymore, paying people not to work. Proxy voting ended, by the way. You know, how many Americans are still working remotely? Businesses are saying, you know, it's time for people to come back to work. We're going to be debating ending the pandemic so that we can get our country fully opened again, and get people, you know, get people living their lives normally again. That's, I think, a healthy debate to have, and those are the kind of things that we're going to be tackling.
You want me to ask? Is Santos going to serve out his term?
Obviously, he's addressed some of the concerns that we've had. In New York, they're having a lot of internal conversations, too. But at the end of the day, you know, he was seated. Nobody objected to him being seated. And we've got to make sure we're all focused on fighting for the families who elected us. Right. You know, you got 434 currently members of Congress.
Are you guys engaging with him, even if he stays?
It seems like he's sitting alone.
Yeah, it seems like he's sort of off to the side. Is that how this is going to proceed?
Yeah, obviously there's going to be some internal conversations, but at the end of the day, he's there. He was sent there by his constituents. 434 members are sent with very different viewpoints, very different walks of life. But at the end of the day, we've got to come together to tackle big problems. And my focus right now is how do we build those coalitions? And look, if Democrats don't want to join us to lower energy costs, we're going to bring those bills anyway. And that means we need to get every Republican on board. Obviously, we don't all think exactly alike, but I think we've all addressed these problems from a similar viewpoint. And when we bring these bills to the floor, we're going to pass them. Again, I hope a lot of Democrats would vote to secure America's border. Why wouldn't they want to do that? But we're going to give them that opportunity. And if they don't want to join us, we're still going to do it. You know, and this idea that, well, it'll go to the Senate and it's not going to go anywhere. Why not? Look, a number of senators finally went to the border. President Biden finally went to the border. It was a sanitized version, but everybody knows how bad the problem is. I mean, just last year alone, more people came into our country illegally than reside in the entire state of New Mexico. And if people don't think that's a problem, go look at the 100,000 deaths from fentanyl. Everybody in every community in America knows somebody who died from a fentanyl overdose last year. And why doesn't the president care about that? He can do something about it by securing the border, and he won't. So Congress needs to. And let's step up and join together, Republicans and Democrats. They shouldn't say, well, it's a Democrat president, so we don't want to upset the apple cart. You know, if they're okay with those 100,000 young people dying last year, shame on them, because we've got to fix this problem. It's a major national crisis.
Oh. Leader Scalise, appreciate having you on this morning, and that we will be avidly watching on C-SPAN, where we don't have to hear anyone interpret anything for us. But
their viewership was up a lot last week.
I know.
Are you going to let them control the cameras still?
I tell you what, they had a lot of access last week. And, you know, I'm glad people are tuning in. So many people were following how government works. And they were listening to the debates. And it's a debate that is needed to be happening.
But do you think the party's going to allow, the party that controls the House gets to control the cameras?
Are you going to let them continue?
Well, look, C-SPAN's cameras have been working the same way during House proceedings for decades. And I think it's good that the public can actually see what's happening. And by ending proxy voting, you're now going to see more members of Congress. You're going to see more members of Congress in the chamber, not back at home voting remotely.
Okay. Thank you so very, very much. We'll see you soon.